Some of the most intelligent people you'll ever meet are also the most mentally exhausted. Not because they're doing too much, but because they can't stop thinking. Their mind replays conversations, rewrites moments, and imagines scenarios that may never happen. Even in silence, something is always running in the background. And the strange part is, the very ability that makes them so aware, so perceptive, so thoughtful, is the exact thing that's quietly draining them. So why does this happen? Why does a mind that seems so powerful also feel so difficult to control? In this video, you're going to understand what's actually happening inside the mind of someone who thinks too much, where this pattern really comes from, and why it's not just anxiety or overreaction. Because once you see the mechanism behind it, you'll start to recognize it in yourself. And more importantly, you'll understand why your mind works this way, and why it feels almost impossible to switch it off when you want to. Overthinkers don't just think, they run simulations. A simple moment doesn't stay simple. It gets replayed, analyzed, stretched into different versions of what it could have meant. A conversation ends, but in their mind, it continues, rewritten with better words, different tones, alternate outcomes. And when nothing is happening, the brain fills the silence with what-ifs, building scenarios that feel real enough to react to. It's like the mind is always trying to get ahead of reality, always searching for the version of events that explains everything. But instead of creating clarity, it creates more noise. And the more it tries to resolve things, the more complex everything becomes. Psychology has a name for this pattern: rumination. It's when the mind keeps returning to the same thoughts, not to resolve them, but to stay engaged with them. Instead of moving forward, the thinking loops, revisiting past moments, dissecting details, searching for meaning that never quite feels complete. And it often focuses on uncertainty, social interactions, or things that feel unfinished. From the outside, it looks like deep thinking, but internally, it's repetitive, automatic, and difficult to interrupt. And the more the mind circles these thoughts, the more convincing they start to feel, as if somewhere in the loop there's an answer waiting to be found, even when there isn't. Most people assume overthinking comes from anxiety or emotional instability, but that's not the full picture. In many cases, it's actually tied to a highly active, highly capable mind. People who think too much are often exceptionally good at recognizing patterns, reading between the lines, and anticipating outcomes. Their brain is constantly trying to make sense of everything, connecting details, predicting reactions, analyzing possibilities. And that's where the paradox appears. The same cognitive ability that makes someone insightful and perceptive also makes it harder for them to switch off. Because when your mind is trained to look deeper, it doesn't easily accept simple answers. It keeps going, searching for more, even when there's nothing left to find. Inside the brain, this constant thinking isn't random. It's a system that stays active even when it should be at rest. The part responsible for analysis and decision-making keeps running, while another network in the background continues generating thoughts on its own. So even when nothing is happening externally, the mind is still producing internal dialogue, reviewing, predicting, questioning. It's like having a tab open that never closes. And because both systems are active at the same time, the brain doesn't get a clear signal to slow down. Instead of shifting into rest, it stays in a low-level state of processing, always scanning, always thinking, even in moments that are supposed to be quiet. For many people, this pattern doesn't suddenly appear in adulthood. It starts much earlier. In environments where reactions were unpredictable, where moods could shift without warning, or where mistakes carried heavy consequences, the brain learns to stay one step ahead. It begins to anticipate, to analyze, to prepare for every possible outcome. Thinking becomes a form of control, a way to reduce uncertainty. Over time, that habit gets wired in. Even when the environment changes, the mind keeps operating the same way. Still scanning, still preparing, still trying to predict what comes next. What once worked as protection slowly turns into a constant mental loop that no longer knows when to stop. Here's where it becomes a trap. Thinking feels like you're making progress, even when you're not. The mind keeps analyzing, comparing, running through possibilities, and it creates the sense that you're getting closer to an answer. But most of the time, nothing actually resolves. You're just circling the same ground in more detail. And there's a reason it's so hard to stop. Every time you engage in that mental problem solving, your brain releases small amounts of dopamine. Not because you found a solution, but because you're trying to. So the act of thinking itself gets rewarded. The loop feels productive, even when it isn't. And that's what keeps it going, reinforcing the habit again and again. But there's another side to this that often gets overlooked. The same mind that overthinks is also the one that notices what others miss. It picks up on subtle shifts in tone, small changes in behavior, the unspoken meaning behind words. It understands people on a deeper level, anticipates reactions, and feels the emotional weight of situations more clearly. That's not weakness. That's sensitivity and awareness operating at a higher level. The problem isn't the ability itself, it's the intensity of it. Because when you perceive so much and process so deeply, it becomes harder to step back. And the line between insight and overload starts to blur. And this leads to a truth that most overthinkers resist at first. Not everything can be solved by thinking. Some answers don't appear through more analysis, more scenarios, or more mental effort. They come from a different place, through feeling, through deciding, through letting something be unfinished. But when your mind has learned to rely on thinking as its main tool, stepping away from it feels uncomfortable, almost wrong. So it keeps trying, pushing for clarity that never fully arrives. And that's the moment where the pattern reveals itself, not as a lack of answers, but as an inability to stop searching for them. Maybe the goal was never to stop thinking completely, but to learn that not every thought needs your attention. That the mind can generate concerns without them being true, and questions without needing answers right away. Because what once helped you stay prepared may now be what keeps you from feeling at ease. And the moment you start seeing that clearly is the moment the loop begins to loosen. If this felt familiar, there's a reason for that.